Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have an article here by the Hawkins Bay Dispatch that you are not going to see covered on the mainstream Mockingbird media. U.S. federal court has dismissed the DNC civil suit against Assange and WikiLeaks. A federal court ruling last Tuesday dismissing a Democratic National Committee DNC civil suit against Julian Assange with prejudice was a devastating indictment of the U.S. ruling elite's campaign to destroy the WikiLeaks founder. And just before I proceed here, let me explain to you the legal term with prejudice. When you dismiss a case with prejudice, the case cannot be brought again. So this is the end of the bullshit, folks. It exposed as a fraud the entire Russiagate conspiracy theory peddled by the Democratic Party, the corporate media, and the intelligence agencies for the past 3 years. The decision by Judge John Kotel of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York rejected the smears that Assange colluded with Russia. It upheld his status as a journalist and publisher and dismissed claims that WikiLeaks' 2016 publication of leaked emails from the DNC was quote-unquote illegal. Despite the significance of the ruling and its clear newsworthiness, it has been subjected to an almost complete blackout by the entire media in the U.S. and internationally. And for those of you who don't believe that the entire media structure is corrupt, I give you the example of Jane Stanley on 9/11 reporting that Building 7 fell 25 minutes before it fell, reading from a script with the building over her left shoulder. You can look that up and see if I'm not bullshitting or what. The universal silence on the court decision extending from the New York Times, which buried a 6-page paragraph report on the ruling on page 25, and the Washington Post to alternative outlets such as The Intercept, the television evening news programs, and the publications of the pseudo-left can be described only as coordinated political conspiracy. Its aim is to suppress any discussion of the court's exposure of the slanders used to malign and isolate Assange, and to justify the unprecedented international pursuit of him over WikiLeaks' exposure of U.S. war crimes, surveillance operations, and diplomatic conspiracies. The New York Times, the Washington Post, and other corporate outlets have relentlessly smeared Assange as a Russian agent and depicted him as the linchpin of a conspiracy hatched in Moscow to deprive Democratic Party candidate Hillary Clinton of the presidency in the 2016 U.S. elections. Now that their claims have been subjected to judicial review and exposed as a tissue of lies and fabrications, they have adopted a policy of radio silence. There is no question that if the court ruling had been in favor of the DNC, it would have been greeted with banner headlines and wall-to-wall coverage. Boy, isn't that true. The response exposes these publications as state propagandists and active participants in the campaign by the Democratic Party, the Trump administration, and the entire ruling elite to condemn Assange for the rest of his life to an American prison for the quote-unquote crime of publishing the truth. The editors and senior writers at these outlets, such as the New York Times editorial page editor James Bennett, are in constant contact with the CIA and other intelligence agencies. Behind the scenes, they work out an editorial line that will advance the interests of the Wall Street banks and the military intelligence apparatus. At the same time, they decide what news and information they will hide from the American and world population. The efforts by the mainstream news outlets to bury the ruling presents a clear example of the type of media manipulation that has led millions of people to seek alternative sources of news on the internet, of which WikiLeaks is itself an example. Judge Kotel's decision made plain the anti-democratic and dictatorial logic of the DNC case against Assange. He warned, quote, if WikiLeaks could be held liable for publishing documents concerning the DNC's political, financial, and voter engagement strategies simply because the DNC labels them secret and trade secrets, then so could any newspaper or other media outlet." End quote. This, he stated, would override the First Amendment protection to freedom of the press mandated by the U.S. Constitution, of which the Democratic Party, the neo-Nazis, really don't give a shit about. They wipe their ass with the Constitution every day. Kodal's finding was an absolute vindication of Assange and WikiLeaks' 2016 publications exposing the attempts by the DNC to rig the Democratic Party primaries against self-declared Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders in favor of Hillary Kill-'em-all Clinton. The judge found these releases, together with the publication of Clinton's secret speeches to Wall Street banks, in which she pledged to be their representative, were matters of the highest public concern. They allowed the American electorate to look behind the curtain of one of the two major political parties in the United States during a presidential election. Kodal, moreover, found that there was no evidence to justify the DNC's assertion that WikiLeaks had colluded with the Russian state to obtain the material. Assange and WikiLeaks has always maintained that the documents were not provided to them by the Putin regime. The ruling demonstrated the flagrant illegality of the U.S. vendetta against Assange. The slander that he was operating as a Russian agent to interfere in U.S. politics was used by the American government and its intelligence agencies to pressure the Ecuadorian regime to sever Assange's internet access in 2016 and again in 2018. It served as a central pretext for its illegal termination in April of his political asylum in the embassy building. The judgment was also an implicit exposure of the lawlessness of the attempts by the Trump administration, with the full support of the Democrats, to extradite Assange from Britain so that he can be prosecuted on 18 U.S. charges, including 17 espionage counts, carrying a maximum sentence of 175 years imprisonment. The Trump administration and the Justice Department are claiming that it was illegal for WikiLeaks and Assange to publish U.S. Army war logs from Iraq and Afghanistan, hundreds of thousands of diplomatic cables and other documents exposing U.S. war crimes and intrigues provided by the courageous whistleblower Chelsea Manning. Kodal's ruling, however, reasserted the fundamental democratic principle that WikiLeaks had a right to publish the 2016 DNC documents even if they had been obtained by the Russian government or any other entity illegally. The clear implication is that even if Manning's decision was to leak U.S. military and diplomatic documents was a violation of the law, WikiLeaks' publication of them was not. The publication of both the 2010 and the 2016 leaks was constitutionally protected journalistic activity. Kodal further undermined the claims of the Trump administration, the Democrats, and the media that Assange is a hacker, undeserving of First Amendment protections. The judge repeatedly referred to Assange as a journalist and WikiLeaks as a publisher. In other words, the attempt to extradite Assange to the U.S. and prosecute him is a frontal assault on the U.S. Constitution and press freedom. In its disregard for domestic and international law, it can be described only as an extraordinary rendition operation, similarly to the kidnappings and torture operations conducted by the CIA. The hostile response to Kodal's ruling on the part of the entire political and media establishment in the U.S. and internationally demonstrates that this conspiracy will not be defeated by plaintive appeals to the government, political parties, and media corporations that have spearheaded the assault on Assange's legal and democratic rights. All of them are using the persecution of Assange as a test case for the imposition of ever more authoritarian methods aimed at suppressing mounting popular hostility to war, social inequality, and assault on democratic rights. Please subscribe to our backup channels, Whirlwind, Revolt, Inglorious Patriots, and Net for Truth USA 2 Patriot channel. You can also find us at Net for Truth USA on BitChute. We fly so close to the target, we're on our 4th fighter jet. We will be relentless truth seekers until the enemies of freedom are defeated. You can support this channel by using the links in the description, but for a $100 donation, I will personally send you a autographed hardcover special edition copy of Land of Childhood's Fears. Also, visit my bookstore at lulu.com/net4truth USA. If you are viewing this video on BitChute, you can use the links in the description to support us, or simply click the green $ dot on our video to support this channel. Thank you. Links are in the description section.